Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Henry Locke, and for nearly a decade, I was the fortress behind the digital walls of Quantrex Systems, a financial data firm handling hundreds of millions in transactions for high-profile clients. My job was never glamorous, but it was vital. As the lead cybersecurity architect, I was the quiet architect behind every invisible defense that kept our systems breach-free for 9 consecutive years. Until Grant showed up. Grant Melrose, slick haircut, startup buzzwords, and a resume long on names, short on substance. He strutted into Quantrex as the new chief technology officer like he owned the place. Said he'd optimize our processes. Said we needed to move fast and break things. Except, in cybersecurity, what you break might never be fixable. Within days of his arrival, he was tearing apart protocols I'd built from the ground up, dismissed them as overkill. I raised concerns during a leadership meeting, pointing out how our competitors had suffered major breaches after cutting corners. Grant didn't even flinch. He waved a hand like I was some nervous old-timer clinging to obsolete methods. Speed over safety, he said. We can't let security slow down innovation. Nobody in that room backed me. Not one. I saw their eyes. They didn't want to rock the boat. Not when a rising executive star like Grant was at the helm. I didn't realize it yet, but that meeting sealed my fate. 3 days later, I was locked out of the security logging server, the core nerve center of my entire monitoring system. When I asked IT what happened, I was told it was a restructuring directive. No warning. No discussion. Just gone. I wasn't angry. I was stunned. I had designed every safeguard in this company. I had protected this firm through threat campaigns, phishing wars, ransomware sieges. Now they were pushing me out, starting with my access, soon to be followed by everything else. And I was right. Thursday morning, I got the invite, security restructuring discussion. Just me, Grant, and HR. I didn't need a crystal ball to know what was coming. That afternoon, in a sterile glass conference room with too much sunlight and not enough humanity, Grant delivered the blow like it was nothing. Your position is being eliminated. We're embedding cybersecurity within each product team, adopting third-party cloud tools. More scalable, less dependent on legacy systems. Legacy systems? That was me. I was the legacy. HR handed me a severance package. 2 months of salary. Accelerated equity. They even let me keep my laptop for the weekend, said I had a couple days to finalize handovers. Grant smiled politely, like he was doing me a favor. Appreciate your contributions, Henry. But it's time we move faster. I didn't argue. I simply nodded, wrote down the admin credentials, and walked out. As I passed the glass wall lined with Quantrex's awards, most secure financial data firm, 0 breaches in 9 years, I felt a deep, acidic hollowness in my chest. Because those weren't their awards. They were mine. And I knew, with a cold certainty, that they'd just signed their own death warrant. I didn't sleep the night they let me go. Instead, I sat in my apartment surrounded by boxes of notes, backup drives, and memories no one at Quantrex cared about. For 9 years, I'd poured myself into that company. Skipped holidays. Pulled all-nighters. Stayed late when no one else did. And just like that, I was obsolete. I kept replaying that meeting over and over, Grant's smug tone, HR's indifferent eyes, the words, more scalable. They cut me loose like trimming fat from a budget spreadsheet. They didn't even realize they were slashing an artery. But that wasn't what hurt the most. It was the silence. Not a single message from my old team. Not from James, my junior engineer. Not from Diane in product, who used to confide in me about how the company was moving too fast. Not from anyone. It was as if I'd been erased. Like I never existed. The next morning, I logged into the backup security dashboard I'd built years ago, a private monitoring system I designed on a weekend because I never trusted the off-the-shelf tools we used. Not company data. Just meta alerts and traffic signatures. And what I saw chilled me. 3 login attempts from an unauthorized IP. My system had flagged them as potential lateral movement probes, an attacker testing boundaries inside the network. But I was no longer part of the company. No longer responsible. No longer allowed to care. And yet, I did. I picked up the phone and started typing a message to James, warning him. Then I stopped. What would I even say? Hey, I'm the guy they just kicked out, but trust me, you're about to get wrecked. They didn't want my help. They made that loud and clear. I deleted the message and closed the laptop. But I couldn't let go. Every fiber of my being was screaming that something was coming. A breach. A catastrophic failure. And they weren't ready. Worse, they didn't know they weren't ready. That night, I took a drive down to Lake Union, parked overlooking the water, and just sat there. Watched the lights reflect across the surface. My mind bounced between 2 thoughts. 1, they'll regret this. 2, what am I supposed to do now? My severance was decent. I had enough to get by for a while. But this wasn't about money. It was about betrayal. It was about being discarded by the very people I protected. It was about the insult that came after years of sacrifice. I thought about reaching out to former colleagues, telling them the truth, how Grant was gutting the systems, disabling safeguards, ignoring compliance red flags. But who would listen? The board backed Grant. The team had fallen in line. And me? I was the paranoid relic. I was too careful. By Sunday, the headlines hadn't come. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe their new system was working. Or maybe the wolves just hadn't gotten in yet. Then on Monday morning, I got a message. Not from Grant. Not from HR. But from James. Henry. Something's wrong. Weird traffic on the Eastern Gateway. Alerts firing. But nobody knows what it means. Please. Can we talk? I stared at my screen for a long minute. My heart was racing. Because I knew what it meant. They were under attack. And they had no idea how to fight back. James's message sat on my screen like a pulse. Please. Can we talk? I didn't owe them anything. They'd tossed me aside like junk. But this wasn't about them anymore. This was about the system, my system, and the fact that they were tampering with things they didn't understand. So I picked up the phone. James, I said flatly. Talk. Henry, thank God. Look, I know they let you go, but something's happening. We've got flagged anomalies all over the Eastern Gateway. The automated system is throwing alerts. But Grant says it's probably just a false positive. I closed my eyes. Typical. What kind of traffic? Rapid port scans. Lateral probes. Repeated failed login attempts across isolated repositories. Have you checked the secondary validation logs? I asked. There was a long pause. What secondary validation logs? Exactly what I feared. That system wasn't documented. I'd built it as a failsafe, an AI-based pattern detection layer designed to run silent and low profile. Not even the core IT logs were connected to it unless you knew where to look. And nobody knew where to look. Because no one ever gave me time to train them. James, I said, trying to stay calm, go to the legacy server and access the black box directory. Use the old QA override credentials from 3 years ago. Run the script called Iris Watch. That's your secondary layer. I heard him typing frantically. Then silence. Then, oh my God. Everything's lit up. It's not a false positive. It's a real breach. Of course it was. Isolate the Eastern Gateway. Immediately. I can't, James stammered. I don't have admin rights on the hardware. Grant restructured all network privileges, centralized everything into cloud access. My jaw clenched. They'd taken a decentralized, compartmentalized fortress and turned it into a single vulnerable funnel. All for the sake of efficiency. Then find Grant. Now. Tell him exactly what I told you. And tell him he has minutes, not hours. I hung up. And waited. 3 hours passed. Then my phone rang. Grant. I let it ring once before answering. Henry, he said quickly, all his smugness gone. We're seeing anomalous activity. James says it's serious. Our internal team doesn't know how to respond. You should have thought of that before you fired your architect, I said coldly. We need your help. You broke it. Fix it. There was a pause. We're prepared to pay your consulting rate. That got my attention. I smirked. $800 an hour. 4-hour minimum. Paid up front. And a signed waiver of liability. He hesitated for only a second. Fine. Agreed. But there's a problem, I said. What now? I've accepted another position. My severance contract has a non-compete clause. I can't access your systems. That was a lie. I hadn't taken another job yet. But he didn't know that. Henry, this is serious. Our client data. Yeah, I cut him off. You'll want to activate the internal segmentation quarantine protocol. What protocol? I laughed bitterly. Exactly. They had dismantled so much of my work they didn't even realize there were layers beneath layers. The security architecture wasn't a map, it was a maze. And now they were trapped inside it. That night, I opened LinkedIn for the first time in months. And there it was. A message request from Elaine Hudson, CTO of Sentinel Security Group. Heard you might be available. Let's talk. I stared at her message for a long time. Then I typed back. Tomorrow. Elaine Hudson met me at a quiet corner table in a cafe near Pike Place Market. She didn't waste time with small talk. We've been following what's happening at Quantrex, she said, sipping her espresso. Word travels fast in our circles. Let me guess, I replied. They're bleeding data, and no one has a clue how to stop it. She gave a small nod. You built something elegant. Complex. They had no idea what they were dismantling. I warned them, I said simply. More than once. Elaine leaned in. We need someone like you. Sentinel's expanding our financial cybersecurity division. Our clients are increasingly skittish. We want custom architecture. Real defense, not vendor fluff. She slid a folder across the table. The offer made my heart stop for a beat. Double my old salary. Full team. Full control. And stock options. You'd be running the entire sector security, she said. And as of this morning, we've been approached by 2 of Quantrex's top clients. They're shopping for alternatives. That was when I realized, I wasn't just getting a new job. I was becoming their reckoning. I signed the offer that evening. And with it, I began my true plan, not to sabotage Quantrex, they'd already done that to themselves, but to make sure the world saw exactly how. I called James the next morning, now using my new Sentinel credentials. They're still in the systems, he whispered. We can't isolate the breach. Our backups are compromised. Grant won't listen to anyone. He keeps insisting it's containable. It's not, I said. And it's going to get worse. What do I do? I paused. Document everything. Save emails. Take notes. Keep records. What for? You'll know when the time comes. Because the next phase wasn't digital. It was reputational. I reached out to a contact at Cyber Sentinel Weekly, an investigative tech blog. Anonymous tip. I laid out what had happened in detail. The dismantling of Quantrex's custom security protocols. The denied documentation funding. The restructuring that left core infrastructure vulnerable. The breach. All of it. I didn't name names. Yet. Within days, the story hit the blog's front page. Was this data breach preventable? Insider reveals reckless security overhaul at Quantrex. The dominoes began to fall fast. Clients started calling. Contracts were paused. The New York Business Journal picked up the story, then Forbes. And as predicted, Quantrex had no response. Then came the public filings. They were forced to disclose the breach to regulators. Nearly 40 client databases compromised. Confidential financial records accessed. Their stock fell 17% in 2 days. I was in a meeting with Elaine when James texted me again. Grant's in meltdown mode. CEO's panicking. Board is furious. They want to bring you back. I didn't reply. They made their choice. I'd become their plan B. But I was already building something better, with people who listened. People who understood the cost of carelessness. At Sentinel, I began drafting our new onboarding framework for all incoming financial sector clients. Step 1, build from truth, not speed. Meanwhile, my LinkedIn inbox exploded. Clients. Recruiters. Former Quantrex engineers. Even Diane reached out. Can we talk? By the time Diane reached out, it was already too late for Quantrex to salvage their image. But I agreed to meet her anyway. We sat down at a small restaurant on Capitol Hill. She looked tired, worn, and much less confident than I remembered. They've lost over a third of our clients, she said quietly. People are leaving in droves. James is barely hanging on. Grant's still pretending he has a handle on things, but the board's furious. I nodded, sipping my tea. You saw it coming, didn't you? I did, she admitted. But no one listened. Grant froze anyone who questioned him out of meetings. He said we had to streamline for scale. I guess we're streamlined now. Into a freefall. She looked up at me. They want you back. Stephen, the CEO, told the board to give you whatever you asked for. He said your name is the only one clients still trust. They broke that bridge, I said. Burned it, actually. She nodded solemnly. I don't blame you. I handed her a card, Sentinel Security Group. You don't have to stay there, I said. 2 days later, she submitted her resignation and joined Sentinel as our Director of Client Communications. She was the first of many. Within 3 weeks, 4 former Quantrex engineers joined my new team. 2 senior compliance officers followed. Then James. Each arrival brought pieces of the story, the emails, the meeting notes, the frantic messages that showed exactly how the disaster had unfolded. My archive grew. And with it, so did our client list. Former Quantrex clients now called us first. They didn't want explanations. They wanted prevention. Real security. My security. Elaine was thrilled. Let Quantrex collapse under its own hubris, she said. We're going to build a fortress from its ashes. I drafted a white paper titled The True Cost of Speed, a case study in security failure. It was clean. Professional. No names. But the industry knew exactly who it was about. The week it was published, 3 Quantrex clients announced their departure. Each cited loss of confidence in internal security governance. 1 week later, the story hit Bloomberg. Quantrex breach traced to dismantling of custom security infrastructure, internal documents reveal negligence. The article quoted internal emails, highlighted my repeated requests for documentation funding, and even referenced a board memo where Grant had written, "We must reduce dependence on legacy personnel. Security processes should not hinge on a single individual." Poetic, considering the irony. I didn't write a rebuttal. I didn't gloat. But I did smile. Not because I destroyed them. Because they destroyed themselves, and the world finally knew the truth. 1 month after the breach, I walked into Sentinel's glass-walled conference room to review onboarding with our newest client, a global wealth management firm that had just terminated its contract with Quantrex. Halfway through the call, my assistant slid a note across the table. "Stephen Wright is on the line. Says it's urgent." I excused myself and picked up the phone. "Henry," Stephen said, his voice lined with exhaustion. "We need to talk." I leaned against the window. "You've had a month to talk." "I know," he said. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. The board understands that now. Grant, he's no longer with the company. So they finally did it. Cut the head off the snake. He's gone." I asked, not bothering to hide my amusement. "Fired last week. After the internal review. And after 3 of our biggest clients left within days of each other. The brand's toxic. No one trusts us. But you, they trust you." I waited. "The board voted this morning. We want to bring you back. Not just as head of security. As CTO. Full authority to rebuild." My breath caught for just a moment. It was what I deserved all along. The role. The power. The recognition. But that wasn't the twist. The twist was that I didn't want it anymore. "Stephen," I said, my tone even, "you're offering me the keys to a house that's already burned down. You can rebuild it." "I already am," I said. "Just not for you." He paused. "Name your terms." "I don't have any," I replied. "You'll need to find someone else. Maybe Sentinel can help. But I'm not coming back. Henry, you have to understand. We didn't know." "No," I said, cutting him off. "You chose not to know." Silence. Then, quietly, "I'm sorry." I sighed. "I believe you. But I'm not the solution to your mess anymore." I hung up and stared at the city skyline. The man who once dismissed me as an obstacle was now begging me to return. And I had no desire to go back. I met with Elaine that evening at our office. She already knew. "They finally asked, didn't they?" she said. I nodded. "And?" "I told them no." She smiled. "Good. I thought it would feel better," I admitted. "It will. Not today. But when you look back, you'll know it was the right call." I leaned back in the chair. They wanted me to fix what they broke. After ignoring every warning. After humiliating me. "And now?" she asked. I smiled. "Now they get to live with the consequences." 3 months later, Bloomberg Business published a deep dive titled, "The Fall of Quantrex, How One Company Ignored Warnings and Lost Everything." The article went viral. It wasn't just a takedown. It was a post-mortem. A warning. It detailed how internal decisions, driven by arrogance and haste, unraveled one of the most trusted financial data firms in the country. There were screenshots. Meeting minutes. Whistleblower interviews. One line stood out. Had Quantrex listened to Henry Locke, the breach might never have happened. I didn't need the credit. But I wasn't going to lie, it felt good. Poetic, even. Because while they were scrambling to repair reputations and patch holes in a sunken ship, I was building something new, something real. At Sentinel, I'd hired over a dozen engineers, compliance experts, and infrastructure architects, half of whom used to work at Quantrex. James now led threat detection. Diane was heading client strategy. We were operating like a fortress, with transparency, collaboration, and actual documentation. Funny how powerful that last part becomes when no one can find the keys you hid inside your own head. Our client base tripled. Fortune 100 firms. International banks. We were the ones getting the calls now. Not just to build walls, but to advise governments, draft regulatory frameworks, prevent the next Quantrex. One afternoon, I received a call from a contact at Wharton Business School. They wanted to use my story, Quantrex's story, as a case study in their ethics and risk management curriculum. Would you be open to guest lecturing? The professor asked. I agreed. And standing before that room of future executives, I told them exactly what I wish someone had told Grant. Speed means nothing if it destroys trust. Innovation is worthless if it leaves the door open. And the cost of security? It always gets paid. The only question is, when? The students were quiet. Eyes wide. I didn't need applause. Just the knowledge that maybe, just maybe, one of them would remember that speech before they cut corners one day. 2 months later, Quantrex was acquired. A shell of its former self. Fire sale price. All assets absorbed. The name retired. The final humiliation. They were bought by one of our clients. Their legacy, buried. Their former CTO, Grant Melrose, updated his LinkedIn again. This time. Just said, strategic technology consultant. No company. No links. No legacy. As for me, I stood on the rooftop of Sentinel's new Seattle office during our summer celebration, watching my team laugh, drink, and toast to the future. Diane clinked her glass against mine. You did it, she said. No, I replied. We did it. My phone buzzed. A new message. From my dad. Saw the article. Proud of you, son. You always said security wasn't just code, it was responsibility. You were right. I put my phone away and smiled. Because that was the one thing I'd fought hardest to prove. And in the end, I hadn't just won a battle. I'd rewritten the rules. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.